It was a chilly Thursday morning in the heart of the city, and the queue at the only working ATM stretched longer than a grocery line during a blackout. People shuffled impatiently, muttering about bills, rents, and late fees. Among them stood Anaya, a soft-spoken young woman in her late 20s, wrapped in a worn orange scarf that stood out like a flame in the gray morning. She worked double shifts at a small diner nearby. Today was payday, and she had 20 minutes to withdraw her hard-earned cash before rushing back to work. But even with the minutes ticking down, she didn't complain. Anaya was the kind of person who carried her pain quietly. Life had never been easy for her, orphaned at 14, raised in a government hostel, and now working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on in her tiny apartment. Yet, she had an uncanny habit of smiling at strangers, of finding something kind to say even in bitter moments. The man behind her, however, wasn't smiling. He looked disheveled, tall, maybe in his late 30s, wearing a suit that once screamed success but was now creased and damp from the morning drizzle. His eyes were sunken, red around the rims. He kept checking his phone, staring at the screen like it held the last hope in the world. Anaya noticed his trembling fingers and pale face. Her instincts kicked in. She turned, her voice gentle. "You all right, sir?" The man blinked, as if woken from a trance. Sorry. Didn't mean to." "You can go ahead," she said suddenly. "You seem like you're in a hurry." He stared at her, confused. "You sure?" She nodded. "Take it." He hesitated only a moment before stepping ahead. The ATM beeped, and the screen glowed. The man pulled out his card with shaking hands. Seconds passed, then minutes. But instead of withdrawing cash, the man just stood there. Motionless, silent, until suddenly, his knees buckled and he sank to the sidewalk, his hands gripping his head. Anaya rushed forward, kneeling beside him. "Sir." "Hey, what's wrong?" People around them muttered, some annoyed, others curious. But no one helped. He whispered, "It's gone, everything's gone." "What do you mean?" He handed her his phone. On the screen was a news article. "Fire destroys local business, arson suspected in blaze that gutted Harlan and Sons workshop." Beneath it was a photo of what used to be a thriving carpentry shop, now reduced to ash and rubble. "My shop," he said, voice hollow. "It was all I had left. After my wife passed, I built it with my sons. Everything we had." His voice cracked. Anaya looked at the man again, really looked. This wasn't just someone having a bad day. This was someone unraveling. She helped him to his feet and said softly, "You can't sit here. Come with me. I work at the diner just down the street. Let me get you some coffee." He protested. "No, I couldn't. You need something warm. Please. At the diner, she slid a hot cup of coffee in front of him. He hadn't even asked for sugar, but she added 2 cubes. Just like her father used to like it. "My name's Anaya," she offered. He nodded slowly. "Daniel." As the morning rush came and went, she snuck peeks at him from behind the counter. He just sat there, holding the cup like it was an anchor. Later, he whispered, "You were the first person to be kind to me all week." That one line stayed with her for days. What Anaya didn't know was that Daniel had been teetering on the edge. His wife had died of cancer a year ago, and he'd spent every last cent trying to save her. His 2 sons had moved away, one abroad, the other estranged. All he had left was his carpentry shop. It wasn't much, but it gave him a reason to wake up in the morning. Until someone set fire to it. He had no proof, but he knew who did it, a competitor who had threatened him more than once. But without evidence, the police couldn't help. He had come to the ATM that morning to see if there was enough left in his account to buy food. To decide if it was even worth going on. But then, a stranger in an orange scarf smiled at him. Let him cut the line. Treated him like he mattered. Sometimes, that's all it takes. Over the next few days, Daniel began coming to the diner more often. Not just for coffee, but for the company. Anaya made time for him. She asked about his wife, his shop, his sons. She listened like no one else had. And slowly, Daniel began to breathe again. He asked one day, "Why did you let me cut in line that day?" She smiled. "I don't know. You looked like you needed it more than I did." Then one evening, she found a note tucked under her coffee machine. It was Daniel's handwriting. "You reminded me that good people still exist. I've been offered a job in another city to teach woodworking. I think I'm going to take it. Thank you for saving me. You don't even know you did it. But you did. Please never stop being who you are. There was no phone number. No goodbye. Just, gone. Anaya stared at the note for a long time, and smiled through her tears. She would never forget the man who had nothing left, and who, because of one small act of kindness, found a reason to live again. The air was warm with the scent of spring. Trees stretched their green fingers into a blue sky while people moved through the city like a river, fast, loud, living. But inside one quiet little bookstore tucked between a bakery and a repair shop, everything was still. Anaya now worked part-time at Page Turner's, a cozy little bookshop near the college. After 3 years of juggling 2 jobs, she'd finally finished her business diploma. She had plans, small ones, but hers. She still wore the same orange scarf. It was older now, a little frayed, but it was her signature. Her silent shield. Her memory keeper. Life was, okay. Not easy. Not glamorous. But quiet. Stable. And sometimes, lonely. She had never forgotten Daniel. Sometimes she would think of that note he'd left her. You don't even know you saved me. She wondered where he was. If he took that job. If he still drank coffee with 2 cubes of sugar. If he was happy. Sometimes she'd smile at nothing, just remembering the way he held that warm cup like it was a lifeline. But people leave. Life moves. One Saturday morning, a man walked into the bookshop. The bell jingled overhead. Anaya, behind the counter, didn't look up right away. She was sorting invoices. He cleared his throat. Excuse me, do you carry books on woodworking? That voice. Her heart stalled. She lifted her head slowly. There he stood. Older. Beard a little grayer. Lines around his eyes a little deeper. But it was him. Daniel. Time seemed to bend in the silence between them. He blinked. Confused. Anaya. She laughed. Actually laughed. Half joy, half disbelief. Daniel. His mouth opened, then closed. Then a soft, stunned smile. I didn't think I'd ever see you again, he said, stepping closer. I thought you were in another city, teaching. I was, he said. But they shut the program down last fall. I decided to come back here. Start my own workshop again, just on a smaller scale. I got offered a corner space not far from here. Her hands were trembling. You're back. I am. They stood in that small shop, in a moment that felt like both a reunion and the beginning of something new. Daniel began coming by the shop regularly, sometimes for books, sometimes just to talk. He told her stories about the kids he'd mentored in his woodworking classes. About his failed attempts at baking. About the dog he'd adopted, an aging golden retriever named Buddy. Anaya listened, just like she had all those years ago. And Daniel, he noticed things. That her scarf was more threadbare. That she rubbed her wrist when she was nervous. That she never talked about her own dreams. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, he asked her out for coffee. Just like old times, he said. This time, she didn't argue. At the cafe, Daniel stirred his coffee with 2 cubes of sugar. He smiled when she noticed. I still like it the same, he said. Some things don't change, but others do. Over the next few weeks, something bloomed quietly between them. Not like a movie scene. There were no fireworks, no dramatic declarations, just gentle consistency. Like the way he'd wait outside the shop on rainy days to walk her home. Or how she'd leave books by his workshop door, titles she thought he'd like. Or the way he once said, out of the blue, that one moment, when you let me go ahead of you at the ATM. It saved my life. And she whispered back, you've said that before, but I never believed it. I meant it. Then came the call. Anaya's landlord was selling the building. The bookstore would close. She would lose her job. And the small shared apartment above it. She didn't know what to do. She had no savings left. No safety net. Daniel found her sitting on the back steps of the shop, eyes red, the orange scarf in her lap. You helped me rebuild my life, he said. Now it's my turn. What do you mean? I've got the workshop. There's a spare room above it. And I need someone to help with admin. Orders. Clients. You'd be perfect. She blinked. You want me to work with you. I want you to be part of it. Of everything. It wasn't a proposal. Not yet. But it was something deeper. An invitation to build a life. Together. The workshop became a haven. They painted the walls themselves. Put up shelves. Filled the space with laughter and music and sawdust. Clients came. Orders grew. Anaya found herself smiling more. Laughing louder. Dreaming again. She started designing a line of hand-painted wooden bookmarks. Daniel insisted they carry them in the front of the store. One evening, while placing one of the bookmarks in a novel, Daniel asked, "Do you remember that line you said to me at the ATM?" She frowned, trying to recall. "You said, you looked like you needed it more than I did." She laughed softly. "I did say that." He took her hand. "Turns out, I needed you." And then, finally, under the warm glow of the workshop lights, he kissed her. 1 year later, there was a crowd gathered in the workshop. A small launch event for their new venture, handcrafted furniture meets custom storytelling. Each piece Daniel built came with a short story written by Anaya. Together, they'd created something unique. Something beautiful. As guests sipped cider and explored the space, a journalist approached them. "How did this all start?" she asked. Daniel glanced at Anaya. She smiled. He turned to the journalist. "It started with a woman who let a broken man cut in line at an ATM. A stranger who chose kindness over convenience." And Anaya added, "Because sometimes, a small act of kindness isn't small at all. Sometimes, it changes everything." The workshop was quiet. Dusty sunbeams filtered through the tall front windows. The scent of fresh pinewood lingered in the air. Outside, kids zoomed past on bicycles, trailing laughter behind them. But inside, Anaya stood alone, one hand resting on the old stool Daniel had made for her, the other pressing her orange scarf to her lips. It had been 6 months since Daniel passed away. A sudden, unexpected heart condition. One day he was sketching a new table design. The next, she was signing hospital forms and holding his hand as machines beeped steadily into silence. The loss had hollowed her. Made the world quieter. Like someone had turned the volume down on life. But grief wasn't the only thing he'd left her. There were journals, full of sketches, poems, half-finished ideas. There was Buddy, the old golden retriever, now grayer and slower but still curling up beside her every night. There was the business. Their business. And there was one more thing. A letter. It had arrived 2 days after his funeral. Hand-delivered by a courier. It was in his handwriting, marked, "To be opened when you're ready." She wasn't ready. Not then. Not even 2 weeks later. But today, something in the sunlight, in the warmth of the air, told her it was time. She sat down at the workbench, unfolded the letter, and began to read. Greater than my Anaya. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't stay. And for that, I'm sorry. I would have given anything for more time with you. But life doesn't always give us what we want. It does, however, sometimes give us what we need. You were what I needed. The day you let me cut the line at that ATM, I had decided that if my account balance said 0, I was going to end it. I wasn't just broken, Anaya. I was done. I had lost everything. But you didn't just let me cut the line. You looked at me like I mattered. You smiled like I was human. You gave me coffee. But you gave me more than that. You gave me time. Space. A second chance. You didn't know it then, but you saved me. And I spent every day after that trying to be someone worthy of that gift. I want you to keep building the life we started. I want you to write. I want you to speak. Tell people this story. Because there are so many Daniels out there. And they need to know that one kind act, one soft word, can be the difference between despair and hope. I've left instructions with our lawyer. The building is yours. The savings we made together. Use it for that reading nook you always dreamed of. And if, one day, you find someone who makes you smile again, please don't feel guilty. Love is not a one-time gift. It's a river. Let it flow. With all my heart. Daniel. Anaya folded the letter with trembling hands. She didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. But because she knew now, Daniel hadn't really left her. Not entirely. His voice lived in every plank of wood in that workshop. His soul breathed through the shelves, the tables, the chair by the front window. And now, she had work to do. 2 years later, a crowd gathered outside a glass-paneled corner building, freshly painted and glowing with soft lantern lights. A new sign had just been hung above the door. Greater than, the orange scarf, a place where stories begin. Inside was a unique space, half workshop, half cafe, half library. Wooden tables with books carved into the legs. Sawdust in the air, and cinnamon in the coffee. A stage in the back where Anaya now spoke twice a week. She shared their story, the real one. The one about the ATM line, about grief, about quiet kindness, and love that heals. People came, and stayed. Many cried. Some shared their own stories. And every so often, a stranger would walk in, broken, uncertain, and leave lighter, changed, hopeful. Just like Daniel did. Final scene. A young woman walks into the cafe, eyes red from crying. She stands in line for coffee, clutching an eviction notice. Anaya, from behind the counter, sees her. And in a soft voice, says,